things, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Thank you all for coming. I'm very excited to be here. I like to start this out showing this slide. Some time ago, I posted this picture of myself to Instagram, and a friend of mine saw it, and she said, "Is that your mother?" And she was very puzzled, and I said, no, that's me. I'm 11. And, when I ran across this photo in an old family album, it kind of cracked me up because I was thinking, this was the 1960s. This was like the swinging 60s, and like everybody was like in color and polka dots and stripes. And I'm wearing this like coat that was probably my cousin's and a babushka, and it's like, I do not know this country. I do not know this language. I have potato in pocket for hunger. I don't know, I think my parents, they meant well, but I think they stopped looking at what other people were wearing in 1938. I'm going to show some cartoons. This is Pigeon Little. The sky is falling. Oh, look, part of a bagel. It's a billboard joke. This is When Moms Dance. I often get asked, where do you get your ideas for cartoons? And most of the time I'm not sure, but this one came from life. When my daughter was about 16, she was doing her homework in the living room, and she was listening to some hip-hop music on the boombox. And I know that there's nothing more revolting in the eyes of a teenager than the adult human body. And I fully understand that point of view, having one myself. But if you want to gild that lily of revulsion, just do a little kind of dance, And she looked up. I just wanted to see if she was paying attention, And she looked up and she said, "Mom, stop, you're hurting me." And it was just such a good line. I asked her if I could use it, and she said, okay. So this is the Holy Trinity, basically. The New Yorker cartoons have these sort of tropes in a way. And, you got your Grim Reaper, you got, desk jokes, you have tombstone jokes, you have Tunnel of Love, Desert Island, of course. And one thing that I kind of like is that everybody has their own personal way to this is my Grim Reaper. I don't know why he doesn't have a head. It's just like this black kind of void. But anyway, it's something that I think about. Anyway, this is antiques, collectibles, bric-a-brac, and garbage. Speaking of tombstone jokes, yeah. This is a Trump joke. Can't bear any news concerning Trump. Can't bear any news. Can't bear anything. It's more of an American joke. This is Friends with Actual Benefits. Paperwork, bring it on. Lives to move your car from one side of the street to the other. And changing cat litter is his passion. This is I don't know if this is something I should be proud of, but this was the first appearance of the word bitch in a New Yorker cartoon. Thank you. This is the not in the mood for human interaction line. every once in a while there's some article decrying the sort of lack of human connection and blah, but like not all the time can one sort of deal with that, especially if you've been sort of like working by yourself all day and then suddenly you have to go to the store and suddenly you're with another person and you have to make conversation, or you feel that you should because maybe your husband is from the Midwest and he's very friendly with other people, and maybe you are from Brooklyn and you have been taught never to make eye contact with anybody you don't know because they could be a nut. So anyway, sometimes when I go to the store, I feel like I should really be like better at making conversation. And I remember one time I went to a line where there was a cashier, and I thought, I'm going to channel Bill, my husband, I'm going to channel. And I was buying some grapes, and I just said, I like grapes. And it was just this like symphony of embarrassment. It was so bad, and I thought, well, that does it for me. This is self-help books for the newly dead. 5 people you should avoid in heaven, eating for eternity, and who moved my urn? And this is a desk joke, too early to begin working on and too late to do anything about. This is trivia night in apartment 8G. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the point of all this rigmarole? And 56% can't do the math, and 54% won't do the math. This is recipes from the I Seriously Don't Care cookbook. Goober tawny. Glog a bunch of things from the closet. Parsley it up before it's too late. Tarrytown stew. Miffle some onions in Berg. Salt it to get to death or don't. Pinwheels. Swat 3 or 4 mushrooms. Mince. Slowly order a pizza. This is a little engine that coulda, woulda, shoulda. I knew I could, so why didn't I? And this is an art school joke. I don't know. If any of you went to art school, you might know what I'm talking about. When I went to art school in the 70s. I went to Rhode Island School of Design, and they were very, very, very serious about art. There was not only not a cartooning department, but there wasn't even a single cartooning class. Cartooning was not thought of very highly. There was, performance art, conceptual art, that kind of minimal art, video art, and installation art. And I think that they thought, like, oh, you want to make people laugh? Well, why don't you go to clown school? It was, this was sort of like during art school, I got really away from cartooning, and then it was just kind of like when I got back, it was like, well, I'm back to the floral skirts, I think. And this is memoirs, way better than your life, pretty much like your life, and way worse than your life. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is the very first cartoon that I ever sold to the New Yorker, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I sort of figured out, I had always drawn since I was a little kid, since before I could write, since I was around 3. Drawing was really important to me, and it was all I ever really liked to do. It was all I ever wanted to do. It was just, I knew I would do something with drawing. And when I was probably around 13, I started to think, I think I'm a cartoonist. I think I'm going in that direction. But I never thought I would be a cartoonist for the New Yorker because I didn't think my stuff fit in there. My parents subscribed, I was familiar with it. My dream was to be a cartoonist, for the Village Voice, maybe, if I were very, very, very lucky, partly because, and that was in New York, it was a sort of alternative paper, and they published Jules Feiffer and Mark Allen Stamety and Stan Mack and people whose work I loved. It was very idiosyncratic. It was social commentary, but it wasn't like, hit people over the head with things. And the drawing styles, each one had their own drawing style, and it was not single panel cartoons with a gag line under it. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll fit in there. And after I got out of art school, I grew up in Brooklyn. My parents were still in Brooklyn. I was starting to take my portfolio around to different places, and I was starting to sell to the Village Voice, and starting to sell cartoons to the National Lampoon, another place where I felt I had things in common with the people that they were publishing. But then in April of 1978, I thought, well, I should try the New Yorker because they do use cartoons. They're never going to take anything, but I should give it a try. And I really knew nothing about this process. And so I called up, and back in those days, you could actually talk to a human being. And I asked when the drop-off day was. And the drop-off day is when people who weren't on staff, they would take their portfolio, and you would go to this kind of outer office in the art department, and you would drop off your portfolio, and then the next week you would come back and you'd pick it up and look for the rejection note, and then the whole cycle would start again. So I dropped off. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 23. I put 60 cartoons in an envelope. I thought, is that a lot? Is that too few? I don't know. And I went back the next week to pick it up, and there was a note from Lee Lorenz, who is the art editor, to come back and see him. And so I did, and I still remember the strangeness of this. It was like, well, this was certainly an unexpected turn of events, and I don't know quite what I'm doing here, but, all right, I'll just... And there was this outer office next to Lee Lorenz's office where there was the staff of New Yorker cartoonists. And I remember they were all, to my 23-year-old eyes, old men. They're wearing like jackets and stuff, and looking kind of serious. And but mostly they just ignored me. And I went in and I saw Lee, and he pulled out this cartoon and he said, "We're going to buy this cartoon." And I was absolutely flabbergasted because of all the cartoons I submitted, this was the most personal one. And personal because this is the kind of doodling that I do when I'm just amusing myself. Like I'm making up, I still do stuff like this. I make up funny names, I make up funny words, shapes, and or like you'd have a friend and you'd say, you'd be in like a boring math class or something, and you'd say, "I have to show you something," and you'd say, "Okay," and it would be like, "Tiv," just some nonsense. But anyway, when they, and then I remember Lee saying, "Sean really likes your work." And I'm thinking, I don't know who this Sean is. I know it's not Sean Connery. But it was Mr. Shawn, William Shawn, who was the second editor of The New Yorker after Harold Ross, and he was my first editor. And so Lee told me to start coming back every week and bringing in a group of cartoons, and so I became a regular cartoonist. But when they first started running my things, I wasn't really aware of this at the time because, I was too young and too not paying much attention to these things. But some of the older guys really, really hated my stuff. They were very, very upset about it. And Lee told me about this later, and he said that one of them actually asked if he owed my family money. This is another really early cartoon. The voice of reason. It's not such a big thing. Just put the galoshes on. The voice of conscience. Mom will be mad if you don't put them on. The voice of practicality. It's raining. Why don't you just wear them? And the voice of Binky. toss them out the window. This is a mailbox, the Cranes, 1,022,796 West 79th Street. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this cartoon because sometimes this aspect of it makes me laugh. Now, the way it works at the New Yorker is that we don't just turn in one cartoon every week. We all turn in a group, which is for some reason called the batch, as in, are you working on your batch? Did you finish your batch? Did you send in your batch? My batch sucked this week, whatever it is. It's called the batch. And I usually shoot for 6, 7, 8 cartoons every week. So they're sketches. And the editor takes maybe a few of these sketches and brings it to the art meeting, and if you're lucky, they might buy one. There's a very high rejection rate. So I had turned in a sketch of this cartoon, and Lee pulled it out of his little folder of the bought cartoons that week. And it looks very much like this, except that the flag on the side of the mailbox is sticking up from the door of the front of the mailbox. And he points to it and he says, "What is that?" And I said, "That's the handle, to open the door of the mailbox." And the truth is, I'd never had a mailbox like this. I had only lived in apartment houses. And Lee redrew the mailbox and he explained the mechanics of a Suburban mailbox to me. And I don't want to brag or anything, but I have one of these now. And sometimes, when I get the mail, I flip that flag up and I'm like, "Look at you." You really know what to do now. So, yeah. And speaking of not knowing anything about suburbs, this is a magazine that I drew called Beginning Yarder. I don't understand yards. When we had kids, we moved out of New York and we moved to the suburbs. And I still don't get yards. I don't get them at all. And I don't get the interest in grass or any of that. But this is Say Hello to Grass, What the Hell is Mulch, Rake or Hoe, which is which, No, You Don't Want to Pool. And the main one is, So You're Outside, Now What? And this really came from, one day I decided I should go out into the yard, because I never go out into the yard. I leave the house and I do something else, but I don't go out into the backyard. So one day, it's sitting there. I really don't know what to do with it. But one day I decided I should go out into the backyard. So I went out into the backyard and I was standing there just kind of, and my husband said it looked so weird. It looked like a deer had wandered into Saks. This is an inside of body experience. Once again, here I am. And that brings me to this book that I'm here to talk about, I Must Be Dreaming. And when I was researching this book, these were two of my very favorite quotes about dreaming. This one is by Harry Wilmer, who is a Jungian analyst. The unconscious has a rare sense of humor. It makes delightful, ingenious puns, jokes, and comic improvisations. We are all creative geniuses in our sleep. And this is from Jung. For me, dreams are a part of nature which harbors no intention to deceive, but expresses something the best it can. According to many people, dreams as a conversational topic should be avoided along with aches and pains. Only shrinks are interested, and maybe not even them. Maybe it's because it's Heraclitus, and this is my school teacher parents' side coming out. It's a Greek philosopher from 500 BC who also believed that sleeping and dreaming were proof that life and death were not opposites, but different points along a continuum. And proof is a strong word. I prefer inkling, but I think it's, he believed that dreaming was, I think that he was as enthralled that there was this other state of consciousness as I am, that, dreams are just something else. It's not nothing, it's something. He once wrote, "The awake share a common world, but in sleep we each turn to a private world of our own." This private world aspect means that something I might learn in a dream, that I can fly by jumping in the air, going horizontal and swimming my way down Broadway, hovering 10 feet off the ground, might not be scientifically accurate. Ever since I was a kid, I was interested not only in the content of my dreams, but in the fact that one dreamed at all. Why didn't I switch off when I fell asleep, like TV channels did at the end of their programming day? What was this mishmash of stuff that projected itself inside my head, like my own weird theater that showed nonsensical movies on a nightly basis? And this is the first cartoon in this series that I did for a while. I was actually working on another book that was going nowhere, and I found myself getting very excited about drawing up, like, not the entire dream, but like a part of a dream that I remembered that made me laugh for some reason, and to see if I could kind of cartoonify them, if I could draw them up. So this is a dream I had. My mother and her friend, a man named Bissell, who knows why, had come into possession of O.J. Simpson's famous glove. This Bissell guy telephoned her to tell her of his great business idea. "We can rent it out for parties. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing it right now." My mother had a different opinion. "That glove belongs in a safety deposit box." It's another dream. For some reason, I was suddenly responsible for an infant girl. Also, I was not wearing any pants. The baby was heavy and needed a diaper. A woman offered to lend me pants, but there were strings attached. "These were my grandmother's. They're very special to me, and I'll want them back." And this drawing, you'll notice there's like a giant scrawl on it, which I'll explain. So I dreamed that I was married to Danny DeVito. I like Danny DeVito. He's hilarious, but he's not someone I think about very often. In my dream, he lay with his head in my lap, gazing up at me with adoration. And I thought, I'm not in love with him, but it's nice to be adored, so maybe this will work out. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I was in New York, and I was doing an interview at WNYC. And the person who was being interviewed before me was Danny DeVito. And it became known to him through the person I was with and the people he was with that he was in my book. And someone showed it to him, and he really liked it, and he gave me this hug. He's like up to here on me, And we were hugging, and he signed my book, "Oh, so nice, love, Danny DeVito." And I thought, this is like probably the most dreamlike thing that has ever happened to me. You guys know what lucid dreaming is? Yeah, I figured. So, okay. I know, you're a literate crowd, So I'm on the subway and my phone rings. "Hello? It's my husband." "You sound weird. Why do you sound weird?" "Of course I sound weird. I'm dreaming." I have a lot of dentistry dreams, and I wasn't sure. I have these sections in the book of like celebrity dreams and body horror dreams, but I wasn't sure which one this fell in, so anyway, I'll read it. As I was walking into my dental appointment, Henry Kissinger was walking out. I sat in the chair. The dentist gave me a shot of Novocaine, which was painful. Even though it was just local anesthesia, I went into the very rarely experienced dream within a dream. I dreamed within a dream that I was in the dentist chair in Tel Aviv. Then, still within the dream, I woke up. My dentist said, "I'm not going to be able to work on you today. My hands are still too sore from the stress of working on Kissinger." He showed me his hands. The knuckles did indeed look sore. I told him about my Tel Aviv dream. This was followed by a conversation about dreams versus reality. You can tell this is reality as opposed to when I was in Tel Aviv. And I have a section in the book about recurring dreams. And I don't know why we have recurring dreams, but I sure do. I think a lot of people do. These are some of mine. Alone at a party. I have a terrible disease. New York City has an unusual neighborhood. There's a kind of corollary of that, like, my apartment has rooms I didn't know about. And I think this has something to do with it being a very squished space. I don't know. Once again, I have lost my purse. The subway is different today. This is the X train, and it's in the Alps. Too many birds, not enough cages. I have pet parrots, so that's why. Plane crashing in the distance. My legs don't work, and there's a physiological reason for this. I mean, unless you have a condition where it's not quite working, but you're sort of paralyzed in your sleep, so that when you dream that you're walking, you don't like walk out of the room and into traffic. And pregnant and old. And believe me, this is not a good dream. Not a happy event. And I have a lot of tooth issue dreams. This is very common. Tooth issues have been said to signify everything from all kinds of insecurity to tooth pain. It's just a very common motif going back to the very earliest books on dream interpretation. And back in high school, and there's a crisis. And for me, it's always, I can't find my schedule. I don't know what class I'm supposed to be in. I know a lot of people have this dream. I don't know why we have it. And inevitably, there's a point in the dream where I think, wait a minute. I graduated from high school a long time ago, blah, blah. But does that epiphany prevent me from having this dream again? It does not. So I just don't know. This is a celebrity dream. I don't know why I dream about Elizabeth Taylor. I learned that Elizabeth Taylor always traveled with her own stove when she went on tour. Amazingly, it looked like the tiny stove in my apartment in New York. I have a studio apartment in the city. It's in New York, and I don't know if you guys have ever lived, any of you have ever lived in a small apartment in New York where you have this stove, and it does have 4 burners, but it's almost like a doll stove. It's just like 2/3 the size of a regular stove. Very weird. My friend Patty and I decided to eat at a divey Chinese restaurant, and we're seated at a communal table. Patty ordered some pastel-colored gelatin squares, and I ordered mugu gai pan, which I knew would be safe. And this is probably because when I was a kid, growing up in Brooklyn, there was one restaurant that my mother allowed us to eat at, which was this Chinese restaurant on Coney Island Avenue called the New Toy Sun. And we only ever ordered mugu gai pan because she believed that was safe. So some waitresses came over and wrapped me in hot towels from head to toe. It was some sort of free spa treatment. This made me laugh and laugh for some reason. I said between bouts of laughing, if I was chilled, I'd enjoy this, but I'm not. And this dream is a great example of body sensation creating a dream. The laughing woke me up, and I found I was overbundled in blankets and too hot. This is one of those Manhattan New Area dreams. Somewhere west of 11th Avenue, you suddenly enter an area that looks like the Sahara Desert. The sand is very fine, sort of pinkish orange. There are lots of dunes and no plants. One fun thing, in the sand, there are tons of conch shells. Some of them are a little chipped, though. Don't want to complain, but no, it's a little shoddy. When I was a child, I had a lot of fears, or as my supremely anxious father referred to his fears, concerns. Diseases were a big one. Also fires, especially those that could start within apartment walls. This had happened to Helen Keller. I learned this from Scholastic Book Services when I was a kid. Had a book, it was a story of Helen Keller, and my takeaway was that there's stuff inside the walls that can burst into flames. Like, to hell with Helen Keller. I didn't care about that. It was just like, I didn't know that there was stuff inside walls, much less that stuff that could suddenly erupt in flames. I also had a lot of nightmares. From the ages of 7 to 9, before I fell asleep, I insisted that my mother recite to me what we called the 4 things. 1, you will never go blind or cross-eyed. 2, you will never lose any of your permanent teeth. So far, so good. 3, you will not have any nightmares. This didn't always work, but it had to be said anyway. And 4, I will stay awake until you're fast asleep. I still have nightmares now and then, but as an adult, I find them as interesting as I find them distressing. And you can see from this picture, I keep this notepad near my bed in case there's like a dream that I want to remember. Recently, I dreamed about a horrible creature called a Pringle. Yes, like the chip. A Pringle looked like a cross between a weasel and a naked mole rat, and it was chasing me. And you can see from the picture, it had this elongated body and this tiny, horrible little face and these little tiny teeth. The thing about Pringles is, if you see one in your house, you have to leave and you never come back. They are a very bad omen. My husband, whom I had accidentally awakened, said I was waving my arms around like a marionette. And the minute I woke up, I jotted down some details. I apologize for this one in advance. There was a water shortage on Earth, but I had a genetic defect where I made tons of saliva. I kept people alive by drooling into their mouths. Everyone was grossed out, but it was either take my drool or die. And this cartoon appeared in the New York. I did this one this was a dream I had, and I drew it up, and the New Yorker actually took this one. This is an art envy dream. I was with some cartoonist friends. We were looking at comic books, not superheroes, more modern ones. And the one I was reading was about a red dog-like creature named Question. He was made of simple geometric shapes. It was wordless. Question mostly walked, but sometimes he hovered in the air. It was the greatest comic I'd ever seen. As a matter of fact, I was extremely envious of the artist who had created it. I felt myself start to wake up. What a relief to find out it was only a dream. And yes, I do have a section in the book of cartoon dreams. I once dreamed a couplet about a man named Orny L. When I woke up, I wrote it down. Something, something, Orny L. When he got mad, he'd ring a bell. I added a couple of lines, and that week submitted it to the New Yorker as a cartoon, which they rejected. But this is what I submitted. Here's a story I'd like to tell about the poet Orny L. When he got mad, he'd ring a bell. I didn't know him very well. And this is a very specific yet very idiotic cartoon dream that cartoon idea that came to me in a dream. This is the funniest idea anyone has ever had. I'd better draw it up right away. And it's swan dancing. It's swans square dancing. Swan dancing. Well, remember, this is what Harry Wilmer said. He said that, and so did Freud, the dreaming brain loves puns. I don't like puns, but my dreaming brain does. The dreaming brain loves puns and word associations and funny, these kind of weird jokes, and it's just has its own logic. This cartoon also ran in the New Yorker from a dream. Last night, I dreamed about shopping for bed slippers. I tried on some big fluffy ones, but I didn't like them. Then I tried on a pair of cute green slippers, which I realized could double as penny loafers, but I would have to put insoles in them because they had no arch support. And the store did not sell arch support insoles, and I bought them anyway. My credit card was square rather than rectangular, and it had a picture of a wheat field on it. The lady wasn't sure the machine would take it, but it did. When the machine took the card, it made a happy little chime. Ding! The end. And this is, I read a lot of very interesting books while I was putting this book together. And this one was quite peculiar. It was from 1924, and it was a book called Dreams, What They Mean to You. And this is a selection of dreams. She had tons of them, but I just selected my favorite ones. Limes, possible illness and much lack. Extra fingers, new friends. Lobster, a stupid but temperamental love affair. Festival, devotion to pleasure means a sad old age. And this is all verbatim. Coffee, opposition to love or marriage. Dynamite, unusual means required for progress. Custard, an experience not entirely pleasant. Hunchback, unlucky, unless the hump is touched. And paper, doubtful success. According to the Kabbalah, the dream state is a sort of refresher or re-energizer for the soul. When we are awake, we are aware of time, but when we are dreaming, we're not only free of time, but also free of the limitations of motion. The Kabbalah also believes in the predictive nature of dreams, perhaps because when we dream, we are free from the linear consecutive nature of the way we experience time in our waking lives. And maybe while we're in that state, we can get a glimpse of the future. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but you really don't know. I mean, we don't know about time. So the Kabbalah also says that our soul is comprised of 60 parts. I don't know how they came up with that number. When we sleep and dream, 59 parts of our soul leave our bodies. The final part remains to make sure we keep breathing, which is probably a good idea. This was a theory that I loved, the Baku. According to Japanese legend, the Baku is a creature that eats bad dreams. It has an elephant's trunk, rhinoceros eyes, an ox tail, and tiger paws. A child in Japan who is having a nightmare would wake up and say 3 times, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." Then hopefully all would be well and the kid would go back to sleep. However, you didn't want to call on him too frequently. If eating the nightmare didn't satisfy him, it would eat the summoner's hopes and desires. Haruki Murakami once said, "For me, writing a novel is like having a dream. Writing a novel lets me intentionally dream while I'm awake." Working on my weekly group of cartoons for The New Yorker sometimes feels dreamish, especially when it's going well. I sit at my drawing table for hours, thinking, doodling, jotting down ideas that might become cartoons on a nearby scrap of paper. At the end of the workday, the scraps containing these half-baked ideas go into my idea box. When I read them later, some ideas gel into cartoons, but many do not. Salad bar from 1066. Turkey in therapy. Sometimes it's just a single word, podiatrist. Periodically, I toss a bunch into the garbage. When one of my kids was around 11, he looked into my studio and saw me staring slack-jawed at a blank piece of paper. He said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I said, "Thinking." And this white piece of paper, I want to share this one wonderful expression with you. A fellow cartoonist used to refer to the white piece of paper, the blank piece of paper, as the blazing island of white, which I thought was pretty good. Letting your thoughts take you where they will, thinking, like dreaming. And this is I'm going to not end the presentation, but end this part of it. I don't remember always like a whole narrative in a dream, but sometimes I just get like a little piece of a dream that I just like so much, I still want to draw it up. So these are just fragments. I cough up gross pellets, then I start coughing up emeralds. A can of food called bungalow breakfast. And I remember what it looked like. It had this yellow label on this red body. A bird museum on 35D, 35H, 35G Street. My mother wearing an apron printed with cuts of meat. Something about a leprechaun with a unibrow. and a cult of fat men in France who dress like Liberace but sound like Johnny Cash. And this is I'm going to end up with a few slides here. This is, periodically I get obsessed with these weird crafts, and then I have to run around and find somebody to teach me how to do them because I really want to learn them. And I love to draw. I love to draw cartoons, and I also really love to make stuff. So I don't know how my head got onto a magazine from 1955. No idea at all. But there you have that. So I got obsessed with Pisanki eggs, which are Ukrainian Easter eggs, and I made hundreds. They're not painted, they are dyed. You draw on the egg with melted wax, and you dip the egg, it's just a chicken egg, into vats of dye, special Pisanki egg dye, which have nothing to do with those cruddy ones that you get at the supermarket. These are specifically Pisanki dyes, and they're very bright and beautiful, wonderful. I just love playing around with the colors. You start with the lightest color, and you work your way to the darkest. And then at the end, you melt the wax off, and it's very, you have to think in the negative, which comes very easily to me. And also, it's extremely finicky, and I've had eggs break on me at every stage in the process, but apparently that appeals to me also. I don't know why. And these are some close-ups of these eggs. You can see what I mean by the color. It's just, this is not touched up at all. The colors are just great. And I love working on the curved surface that has its own challenges, and you can do these drawings that would only make sense on a curved surface. Like I have one of people sitting on a bus, but it's this kind of endless loop of people sitting. This is a guy, this is a nighttime scene, and I was just playing with different shades of blue. It was really fun. And this is a dinosaur getting a haircut. This is, I decided I really needed to learn how to do this craft called primitive rug hooking, and this has nothing to do with latch hook rug kits or anything. This is my dad. He is at breakfast. It's kind of about him. He wasn't this giant eater, but what he liked to do for breakfast, or this breakfast lunch meal, he liked to take everything out of the refrigerator. And it would drive my mother absolutely crazy, but he just liked to do that. And these things, these very old country things like borscht and shav, and he put the sour cream in it. It was disgusting, but he just loved this. So this is him. And again, it's about color for me, and I love this aspect of the rug hooking. And I like the way cans look. I don't know why. So this is carrots and peas. And then I got very into hand embroidery. And this is, I got into embroidering on, those fabric books that you get from an upholstery store that, when they discontinue a fabric, they discard these books of fabric samples, and they're 12 by 14 or 12 by 12 inches. And this one I did at the beginning of the pandemic, and it really didn't take much to transform these flowers into the coronavirus. Images, were everywhere. And I still remember, I'd be talking to a friend and, or emailing it, be whoa, on Google now the coronavirus is purple. Last week it was green. Just the graphics that they would use. And this one also in 2020, I was looking at this fabric. It had this white kind of cross thing, and suddenly I realized, it's a window pane, and this woman is behind it, and she's indoors, she's looking out, and it became a cover for the New Yorker, but here's one funny thing about it. Not only did they crop it, to fit it and take out the inside, but David Owen, that's a friend of mine, David Remnick did not like the blank eyes. They creeped him out. So, ta-da! So, yeah. This is another New Yorker embroidery cover, and this was a tech issue, which also happened to fall during the Mother's Day week, and of course, it's a motherboard. And Insomnia, another embroidery, and Don't Make Me Go Outside. But you can kind of see bits of the pattern. And this one, the fabric reminded me of the way side streets in New York can look, like in the West 30s or the West 40s, with all of these little weird stores and the shadows on the buildings and stuff. And this is two birds. And I got very excited about this because I decided to put some little tiny beads into it. And you can see the, you can see the close-up here. Wonderful YouTube taught me how to sew the beads on, which was fun. And this is the back. And this kind of makes me laugh because it's like, everything's great, people are sane, the world is good. No, it's not. No. Yes, it's good. People aren't crazy. Everything's good. No, definitely not. This is an embroidery I did. This is one of my very favorite quotes about anything, anywhere, by anybody. And it's a Polish poet, Czesław Miłosz. When a writer is born into a family, the family is finished. And I'm just going to end up with a couple of cartoons here. This is End of the World guy. The vain but realistic queen. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who, if she lost 10 pounds and had her eyes and her neck done and had the right haircut, could, in her age group, be the fairest one of all? And we'll end on a tombstone joke. Tuned in, turned on, dropped out, dropped in, worked out, saved up, dropped dead. And that is it.